really believes in it anymore. But there are tons of people using intuitionist logic, and you could very well go take a logic class in college in 2 years from now or something, and end up studying intuitionist logic. It's still very alive and well. What is intuitionist logic? It's the substitute logic that the intuitionists propose as the correct logic of correct background logic of mathematics, in distinction to standard logic, which they felt had these flaws. And it kind of goes like this. It ends up being really useful for programming. If you do a lot of theoretical computer science, you will end up learning intuitionist logic because, no, I don't exactly know what I'm talking about here, but it sort of makes sense because you rephrase instead of Brouwer would have said that stating P really means that you have a proof of P. Well, somehow what you're interested in is like verifications or something like that, then intuitionist logic can be useful for like sort of saying that you have some way of computing or something like that. I'm gonna look back at this and try again later. But this is one interpretation of what this means. Okay, so if you have a contradiction, then that means something is not provable. Saying a proof of A and B, this is a kind of a recursive definition of the and symbol or something like that, means that you have a proof of A and you have a proof of B. A proof of A or B means that you have a proof of A or you have a proof of B. And if an intuitionist asserts if A then B, then what they really mean is that they have a construction which can transform any proof of A into a proof of B. And of course, if an intuitionist asserts that there exists some object with some property, then they must present an actual element that has that property. So, for example, something as mainstream as the intermediate value theorem, for example, is simply not allowed in intuitionist mathematics. And there are, it's not nobody, there are some people out there who really believe that constructive mathematics is the correct mathematics that we should all be doing. And in constructivist mathematics, intuitionist mathematics, you cannot have something like the intermediate value theorem, because of course the intermediate value theorem just says, as you know, that it just says, if, blah, 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 then there exists a point C. But it does not give you an algorithm for constructing that point C, or at least not obviously. So if you want to be an intuitionist, and a lot of people did want to, everything just kind of sucks. Everything is just way harder than it is if you accept the mainstream mathematical principles. So the intuitionists have their own version of every mainstream theorem. They have their own intermediate value theorem. It's like the constructivist intermediate value theorem. And what it says is, basically, loosely speaking, it says, all right, there exists some point C such that
C is the limit value.
C is like the U.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So there exists an X. Thank you. The X is like, they don't say that it equals C, but they say that the gap between f of x and C is like can be essentially less than epsilon, right? So it's a kind of like a clunkier version of the intermediate value theorem. Without worrying about the details too much, instead of saying that there exists a point where the function equals that chosen intermediate y value, they say, well, you can get as close to it as you want, or something like that. Okay. What's up?
Why is that better?
It's not better, but they have to do that because
there's still no way to construct it. You're still saying there's a point that satisfies a different property.
this is a weaker theorem, I guess, is a way of looking at it, right? The intermediate value theorem is like philosophically invalid for the intuitionists, and so they have to replace the intermediate value theorem with like a more complicated, weaker form, which says that doesn't assert the existence of an exact real number, but says it can be as close as you want, or something like that. Okay, good. I think Brittany decided to put this in the end. This is not important for this class per se, but Brouwer was like, what's like 5 levels beyond chauvinist? Like just bad chauvinist. Very, very bad. He just had, even like for 1905, which is saying a lot, had just some like extreme views on like on all kinds of social issues. I don't think I need to necessarily read this out loud. I'll post this presentation. He wrote something when he was like 22 or something like that, which got published later, with all kinds of just outrageous positions. He thought that like basically society was just destined for decay based on the introduction of women like into the workforce. I don't even understand some of this stuff. Also, and you're not going to believe me, but this is a real thing. Like many Dutch people, he believed in gnomes. I don't know how much you know about the like Germanic culture and their like obsession with like little elves and stuff like that, but I think it's like even as recently as like 10 years ago, they did like a survey of like the adults in Iceland and found that like 1/3 of them believed in like magic elves. It's like a real thing. Look it up. Life is a magic garden, writes Brower, with miraculous, soft, shining flowers. But amidst the flowers, the little people walk, that I am so afraid of. They stand on their heads, and the worst is they cry out to me that I must also stand on my head. Now and then I try it, and I burn with it. Okay, he believed in gnomes, for real. He also, he gets attacked so much throughout his life by Hilbert and others that he just kind of goes a little bit, he just becomes really sad and depressed. What is even this? I don't even know what this slide is. All my life's work has been wrested from me, and I am left in fear, shame, and mistrust, suffering the persecution of my baiting torturers.
He's an asshole.
Yeah, bad. He's a mean guy. He is goes completely bankrupt. Sorry, he's not bankrupt. He has a paranoid fear of bankruptcy, which is unfounded. And just at age 85 gets hit by a car in front of his house and just dies. Really bad. All right. Woo! Good. So here's where we are in this class. Russell's paradox, very bad. Russell and Whitehead try to fix Russell's paradox, but that is generally considered to have not worked too well. And that's because logicism doesn't really work. The Intuitionists have this entire sort of renegade branch of mathematics, which they attempt, which becomes really popular. What we will hear about starting tomorrow is the mainstream response. The mainstream response to Russell's paradox is to just get better set theory axioms. Okay, cool? And we will have this quiz like at some point, I don't know when. By period 7, you're going to be watching a lot of videos this week. And have a nice snow day. Turn it off.